Good evening. This side Rahul Magan here as a Group Chief Executive Officer, Treasury Consulting, and also a second year law student. Today, my deliberations is not from an angle of law, but from an angle of finance. I'm not saying that there is no angle of law which is there. There is definitely an angle of law. And that angle is called ARC, which is known as Asset Reconstruction Companies. But having said that, this angle of law I am keeping on hold for the time being. The reason behind this, because if I try to cover this angle of law in this video, then the video would be more than 40 minutes. Henceforth, I am keeping this on hold. But having said that, if the time permit, I would definitely be linking this with ARC. But having said that, we already covered few videos pertaining to asset reconstruction companies. And God willing, as the time would progress, we intend to cover asset reconstruction companies across the globe. But before I move forward, I would like to express my gratitude to the taxman and specifically this book, which is Indian Accounting Standard. As I told in my earlier videos also, I am reading this book very, very diligently and paragraph by paragraph, although time is definitely a constraint and it is fairly impossible to read this book in a very short span of time. Fairly impossible. But still, I'm reading this and trying to make lots and lots of linkings as far as the IND-AS is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, I went through page number 1084 of this book. And believe me, this book is speaking a very, very hot topic, which should be a matter of debate. But like I said, I cannot cover this whole topic in one go. So what I did, I went one level back and I went to page number 1083 of this book. And I went through a concept known as effective interest methods. Now, effective interest method is one of the methodology to compute the pricing. Having said that, this is not the only methodology. There are multiple methodologies which we are having. Henceforth, like I said, in this video, I am keeping only the credit impairment into consideration. Now, what this book is saying that interest revenue shall be calculated by using effective interest method. This shall be calculated by applying the effective interest rate to the gross carrying amount of the financial asset. Now, financial asset means an asset which is in the books of bank, probably private equity, venture capitalist, maybe some big hedge fund, maybe alternate investment fund and all. But having said that, since we are talking about IND-AS, which means Indian Accounting Standard, which means that foreign jurisdiction is prohibited because Indian Accounting Standard is applicable on the companies which are incorporated in India. And that too, there are certain conditions like, there are certain conditions like Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3, mandatory rollover to IND-AS, voluntary rollover to IND-AS. There are various pros and cons. We'll speak a little later on that. Now, the point is saying purchase or originated credit impaired financial asset. Ladies and gentlemen, credit impaired financial asset means that a financial asset whose cash flow is impaired because of a probability of a credit default or a similar kind. Now, let me make a very simplistic example in this regard, which is suppose, a bank is funding to any ex-corporate. say 5,000 crores, and this ex corporate is investing in terms of a huge manufacturing facility to produce t-shirts. Now this is a hypothetical example. And unfortunately, due to the competition from outside India, the prices fell, or maybe the recession, maybe the higher interest rate, maybe the fall in the domestic savings, or n number of factors, the price which the t-shirt maker was expecting, he's not getting that price. So let's make it little hypothetical that his contribution is negative 100, which means selling price minus variable cost. So suppose he's making a t-shirt at 300 rupees. Suppose he's selling t-shirt at 300, but his cost is 400 rupees, which is variable cost. Remember, contribution do not include the fixed cost. Fixed cost is separate. I'm not talking about that in this video. Now your contribution is negative 100, which means you are losing, which means the whole setup that relevant company XYZ made to have a t-shirt facility into picture, it means it is not yielding any money. It is not at all yielding any money. Probably after 1 year, 2 years, or probably 3 years, that relevant person who owns this company decide to wind it up. And probably he may not in a situation to fund to return back the money which he borrowed from the relevant bank. In this eventuality, the asset which the bank created in his book, because bank lended 5,000 crore to that t-shirt maker, the asset the bank created, now this asset is useless. This asset is zero, which means there is an impairment. Impairment are of various kinds. Impairment are of various kinds. And like I said, one of the finest ways to learn impairment is definitely the ECL, which is called expected credit losses. But before I take further, technically speaking, credit impairment can be of two types. Number one, original credit impaired asset. And here comes the ARC, asset reconstruction companies, which practically means that they are buying the assets who are credit impaired. And one is subsequent credit impairment, which means in a due course of time. It was good, perfect, healthy financial asset, but due to financial conditions and various other factors, that financial asset eventually become credit impaired. And here comes the provision. This is a little technical point, that provision versus ARC, asset reconstruction company. Henceforth, this is a very relevant topic today. If I read paragraph number B, financial assets that are not purchased or originated credit impaired financial asset, but subsequently have become credit impaired financial asset. For those financial assets, the entity shall have effective interest rate to the amortized cost of the financial asset. So basically, generally we have three options to handle when we talk about the credit impairment. Number one, we can go amortized. Number two, we can take this OCI. OCI means other comprehensive income in the equity side of the balance sheet. Number three, we can take this to P&L. But country to country, nation to nation, the guidelines differ. Like Indian Securitization Act is altogether different. The US might be having different. Europe might be having different. All have their different respective guidelines. But having said that, if you are taking this asset to your P&L, which practically means you are marking off, you are writing this off. And when you are writing this off, then strictly speaking, in Indian context, if you're a bank, it means willingly or unwillingly, you're supposed to sell to ARC, which is asset reconstruction company, where a concept come into the picture, which is called skin in the game, which means 15:85, which means suppose the net value at the time of selling, suppose the book value is 400 crores, while the net value is merely 50 crores, and which means the buying price. 15:85 means that 15% of 50 crores, which is near about 7.5 crores, they need to pay upfront, and rest on this 85% part, which is 42.5 crore, they can make SR. By SR, I mean security receipt. And ladies and gentlemen, security receipt are of various kind, various classes. We already discussed in our video. Another very interesting point, which is talking that when our contractual cash flows of a financial asset are renegotiated or otherwise modified, and renegotiated or modified doesn't result in the de-recognition of the financial asset in according with the standard, entity shall recalculate the gross carrying amount of the financial asset and shall recognize modification gain and losses. By de-recognition means you are not recognizing this financial asset in your books. Take a note of that. De-recognition is having multiple meanings. It depends which part of de-recognition was talking. I am de-recognizing my hedge accounting. Okay. Which practically means that the exposures do not exist. That is why you are de-recognizing your hedge accounting. I am de-recognizing this financial liability. You are de-recognizing, maybe you settled with the party, or maybe the party himself wanted to settle, or there could be n number of reasons. I am de-recognizing my financial asset. You are de-recognizing your financial asset because the value of that financial asset at a given point of time, say whatever, becomes zero due to any reason in the picture. Henceforth, de-recognition in accounting means it varies from situation to situation. Generally, people feel that de-recognition used in hedge accounting. No, de-recognition used at various places. It depends. The gross carrying amount of the financial assets shall be recalculated at the present value of the renegotiated or modified contractual cash flows that are discounted at the financial asset original effective interest rate or credit adjusted effective interest rate for purchased or original credit impairment financial asset or applicable the revised effective interest rate. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm having deep reservation as far as the discounting is concerned. It's highly unfortunate that the world not yet unite as far as the single discounted rate is concerned. LIBOR has been dismantled. June 2023. LIBOR is history. Now the world is on SOFR, which is secured overnight financing rate. But ladies and gentlemen, secured overnight financing rate is not the only RFR. By RFR, I mean risk-free rate. Different countries of the globe have their different RFRs, like you have Ionia, Sonia, Onia, Australia, ESTR, and different RFRs. Henceforth, SOFR cannot be the only choice. My simple submission is when we are talking about the de-recognition of the financial asset in reference with credit adjusted effective interest rate, credit adjusted effective interest rate, that methodology should be clearly identified. I'm not commenting on the book, I'm commenting about the technical part of it. Because credit impairment depend upon asset to asset. It depends upon country to country. It depends upon balance sheet to balance sheet. It depends upon probably sometimes it's a fraud. So let me give you an example. Like in this case, the earlier case which we taken, the T-shirt case, it's a natural case of credit impairment. What would if the person who borrowed 5,000 crore from whatever bank and started making T-shirt but siphon off the money to some other nation? Then the scene is completely different. Henceforth, the credit impairment of the earlier scenario cannot compare with the credit impairment of this scenario. Henceforth, my simple submission here is that when we are making the balance sheet, and especially when we are making the balance sheet of a bank, then I request that credit impairment is something which the regulators, the financial community, the accounting community, the respective stakeholders should deliberate in a highly detailed manner. Because one of the unfortunate reasons which we are having that India do not have a very liquid CDS market, which is called credit default swap. And unfortunately, if I look across the globe, like Singapore, US, Europe, then one thing is quite clear is that, especially in United States, the credit derivative market is very big. In fact, I don't think even any book can explain how big is the credit derivative market in US. Henceforth, finding a credit impaired curve in US is very easy, but having the same scenario in India is relatively very tough. Ladies and gentlemen, credit impairment is a very sensitive issue. A lot of action to be done. Of course, as the time would permit, we continue to have a lot of videos, but having said that, we are keeping our videos a little lighter so that people can understand, not very, very technical kind.